Well, it's
He,
like, was it Ted Bundy, right? That people were like, he was so charming and he's smart, and then kind of makes it more terrifying that he like then has this other like aspect of him that is
oh yeah,
the cruelest, of the cruel, right? I mean, there's just,
I remember
there'll be
seeing a
some.
picture. I just remember seeing a picture, and somebody posted it like on Facebook to make a point because they'd been talking about somebody had been defending some bad person, you know, and had been defending him, saying he's married, he has children, so he can't be a bad person, right? And a
Right.
person very aptly posted this photo of Ted Bundy washing dishes with a woman that he may have been dating or knew or whatever, standing
Uh-huh.
there, and there's obviously a third person who took the picture, but
Yeah.
he's affable, just
Mhm.
drying a plate. Hey,
Right.
hey, he
Sure.
looked as domestic and pleasant as you could ever be.
Right. Well, there was a lot of the serial killers. I think if I'm remembering right, I think Ted Bundy had a longtime girlfriend who started to hear the stories and started to go, "Can't be Ted. Sounds like Teddy. That can't be. That can't be though." And then ended up kind of coming forward, and that was what traced them back.
It might
Eventually,
have been the
but
woman in this photo.
it
There
might
was
have been, yeah.
it was a very domestic photo. I mean,
Right.
he looked like he couldn't hurt a fly and never would. You know,
Right.
is what he
Yeah.
looked like in this picture. You know,
Right.
yeah, and the person just
It's
wrote
crazy.
a great cap. They said, "And here's Ted Bundy washing dishes with." So they
That's
basically
like
they're saying, "Shut up about
right.
an evil person not being evil because they're married with two kids." You know,
Right.
yeah.
Sure. Sure. Well, it's interesting, you said that because there is that point where characters they just become their own thing, and you're trying to find what they're doing versus inventing it, right? And so when Eric LaSalle was on the show, he had mentioned, I wish I could remember the author's name. It was someone had told him, so I'm or Kevin Bacon and
Uh,
degrees down, but she had asked him, so I wanted to pose the question to you here to kind of fulfill the square this circle. Is do your characters fight to stay alive? Like once the character, any of them really, but once that character is their own entity out there, do you ever feel like you think, oh, they're this has happened and now they're going to be, they're going to be dying. But do you ever feel them like screaming that, no, I still have things to
don't
do?
kill me, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Author, what are you thinking, man? I matter.
Mhm.
You know?
Right,
I,
right.
I matter here. We might all even
I
think
have
that.
a wife and kids.
Yeah, right, right. And
Right.
you can spare me. I'm not
Mhm.
supposed to die. You know. Uh,
Right.
yeah, there is one character who I didn't feel in reciprocity like he asked me not to kill him. I was asking myself not to kill
Mhm.
him. And I can't say who because you have people in your audience who haven't read Reciprocity. Um, but I'll say he's an important character. There are a number of them. He's a character I like, but in the situation that he was in, he wasn't going to survive. And and there's another character who just wasn't going to leave the room like a Bond. Hey guys, my hapless henchman, finish Bond off. I'm going to go play golf. And that's when Bond can take advantage of the hapless henchman. They leave the room. Goldfinger, even Goldfinger. I know, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. That Bond says, well, what about Operation whatever it was? And he goes, oh, well, maybe not, and and then later on, he's not there,
Right.
and Bond gets away. And speaking of willing suspension of disbelief, right? But that's a series in which the worst marksman in the history of the planet, except for Star Wars stormtroopers, are trying to kill James Bond. Okay? That's what
Right.
it requires for James Bond to survive is poor marksmanship and bad decisions by arch villains.
Mhm.
That's the repeated chance for him to survive. And of course, Ian Fleming, can't, kill James Bond, so we just have to be inventive.
Mhm.
Well, this one character, I felt that way. I was like, I don't want him to die. But if he doesn't die now, then I have failed in my presentation this particular bad guy.
Mhm.
This particular bad guy's thoroughness as a habit, as a philosophy, would totally fail if he quote unquote leaves the room and assigns
Mhm.
us henchmen to finish the job.
Right.
Yeah, there was one. Yeah.
Sure.
But I did it anyway because I felt the story would be weaker. And there's a moment that comes up as as he passes. There's a moment
Mhm.
that comes up with another character as he passes. It's essential to the story. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
the story
absolutely.
comes first. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. Dude, where I wonder where because there's that dread, right? Like you mentioned, like with Fingo, there's this sense of dread anytime like he's in the room and things. I guess kind of a two-parter kind of question to that is how do you kind of inspire that dread? But then, and maybe kind of part and parcel to that, but where does that dread come from? Like from for the reader, like where does dread this feeling of kind of dread generally come from? And then how do you inspire that, with your
Yeah.
stories?
Yeah. Well, in reciprocity, the story is told by a third person anonymous narrator, multiple character points of view. Okay, so each chapter is a particular character's point of view and experience. And so the dread it has got to be on the part of that character. That character is the one who has to be experiencing dread, true dread, even
Mhm.
contemplating dread. If it's an intelligent character, you know, the difference between dread and feeling apprehensive or feeling afraid because you heard a sound in the night. You know,
Mhm.
not, there's that fear, and there's dread, and
Mhm.
there's a certain level of certainty in that. You know that it could be certainty for that character. This is what's coming, and it's beyond horrifying to me, involving the potential, the likelihood of pain, the likelihood of suffering, the likelihood of ceasing to exist in the universe forever, returning to the void this way and knowing it. That's, I think, where dread would come in because dread involves the absence of hope. I think the absence of hope contributes to dread. And
Mhm. Sure.
I do fear that if I ever have like grade 4 terminal cancer and I'm in my last days, say in 3 months, I've gone from the diagnosis of grade 4 pancreatic cancer to the end. Well, I think, because I love life so much, I think dread, the more you love life and the people that are in your life, the more I think I expect the feeling of dread to be there at the end. I dread returning to the void without people that I love and dogs that I love and, morning sunshine and peppermint
Mhm.
coffee at 7 in the morning. I enjoy all of those things. And someday, you know, I
Mhm.
go back to the way I was, as Mark Twain said, for billions of years. I won't know it, thank God. You know what I mean? But,
Mhm.
but I'll know it when I'm about to have that happen. That's going to be dread. I know that's going to be the case with me. I don't think I'm going to be laying there going, I think it's been a life, fairly well lived, to use the cliche.
Mhm. Sure.
I don't think so. I think it's going to be, oh no, oh
Yeah.
no, you can't. How about another day or another 2 days? And
Mhm.
I in this novel, I had a couple characters in that kind of situation, except they're in that situation not for medical reasons, but at the hands of a deeply evil human being. And I must say, I will confess that I do believe in capital G and capital E, good and evil. I do.
Mm-hmm.
There's nuance in between, there are variations and all of that. And there are bad people with good traits and there are good people with bad traits, but there's also evil, and there is evil and there is good. You know, a profoundly meaningful novel to me, less for the actual religion part and more for just what I sense might be real out there with the capital G and capital E, was The Exorcist. You know, William Peter Blatty was born to write that one novel. And it's really a great novel that I believe you could teach in class. It doesn't get taught, but I don't see why not. You know,
Sure.
it has a literary quality that I think is profound. And but the notion, you know, that good and evil have been around always, and that the universe is darkness that is only interrupted by light. Darkness in the universe doesn't interrupt light. You need light to interrupt. Darkness is everywhere. That's the natural state of the universe. So it's only light that interrupts it. And do we as people recognize that and try to be part of the light that interrupts the darkness? Because the darkness keeps coming. We've seen that in human experience. We're seeing it right now. I'm not going to get into politics, but you probably can guess where I am on that spectrum. And it's that light interrupts dark. That's dark is there all the time. And we have to make sure that so is light, that it's there, that it illuminates, that it gives hope. And so for me, dread is bereft of hope.
I think that's a brilliant way to put it. It's really interesting too when you said that, because I think about that all the time too, right? Because I write lots of well, I guess more early writing was more lots of characters in that gray zone. But there really is that bell curve with everything, right? Where it's like, yeah, most of us humans are here in that bell curve.
Right.
There's people out there that, and then when you hear some of the tales of what they've done and things, and just to say that it's all brainwaves and all, you know, this, you know, I'm wrong about lots of things. I could be wrong, but there is certain times where you're like, this just feels like evil. Like that feels like a complete, like it doesn't feel human anymore.
Yeah, there's
like,
not a lobe in the brain that fully explains evil, in my opinion. I mean, people talk about, oh, the frontal lobe had this wrong with it. There is also the essence of soul, you know, there is genuine evil, you know. I mean, if there are real people who order other real people to be lowered slowly into a vat of boiling oil. I mean, now it's evil to pop them with a bullet in the head. That's evil too. But there is another level, and then some, to that level of sadism, and it exists. It exists right here in our continent. You know, you read stories, real life stories about the Mexican drug cartels. I mean, they make the American Italian mafia, you know, look like characters on Captain Kangaroo. I mean, that level of sadism that delights in suffering that much, you know, and it's just knowing that exists, you know, and the natural fear in any of us of ever being under the thumb or under the control of someone like that. And there are people right now who are under that control right this minute. Who are having that kind of thing done to them. Now, it certainly got our attention when, say, an American journalist who has come under the thumb or control of ISIS and is in a cage, and they film that person set on fire in that cage and put it out on YouTube. I mean, that is just a degree of evil that can only be explained with a capital E. You know? And I think that is one of the things that a guy like William Blatty was after. or Stephen King in The Shining. What is there at this hotel? It's capital E, evil.
Right.
Wants more power than it has and wants to get it from this innocent child. Well, King was simply using a phenomenal imagination and a great writing ability to basically say it's out there, it's manifested through human beings. They could only manifest it through the Jack Torrance character, the dad. If they could make him do evil things, that's how the Holocaust happened. Adolf Hitler probably never shot anybody in the head or put anybody in a gas chamber. Charles Manson didn't kill anybody.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I wonder, so it's interesting to, it's an interesting concept, right? And then it's one that there's the writer who does some of the open bars always calls it the woo-woo of writing, right? Those things you can't really quantify, right? Because we can work on our work ethic and craft, et cetera, et cetera. Where do you fall? Like, do you think writing, because like we were just talking about good and evil, right? There's I'm the same way. There was a really interesting study that a neuroscientist had did where I think it was the frontal lobe, but then he had that same deficiency there. And he's like, well, why am I a serial killer? And then they kind of went into it. There's like a warrior gene that's usually triggered on that makes you a little more aggressive. They call I forget the actual gene name, but they call it the warrior gene because most people that join military and stuff tend to have that activated. And then abuse when you're a kid. So he's like, there's this kind of confluence of these things may make that kind of person. But even I still don't think that kind of explains everything. And I don't think that applies to everyone you would give that capital E to. But
no, right.
Yeah. But what for writing, right? We tend to always think like, okay, get a routine. All those things, I'm not saying any of them are important. But there used to also be this notion of the muses, right? That you had to open yourself up to whatever that creative process, right? Call it the muses, call it whatever. How do you feel about that? Do you think it is just T.D. Johnston that comes up with these things? Or is there other powers, whatever you want to equate those to, that contribute?
That's a great question. I only feel like there has been that muse for one project, and it's one that I'm getting ready to edit. It's another novel titled The Temple of the Graces. I'm not going to get into the whole plot and outline and everything like that, and it's going to change because I'm about to start revisions. But it's the one thing I've written that I felt like something was nudging me in terms, not just compulsion, but which is really feels more like a compulsion to write. This one was, you must write me before you die. Fine if you die before it's published, but you better put it out there. That's this one that I am getting right in the revision process on, called The Temple of the Graces. And you could ask my wife to come on your show and make me promise not to prep her. And you could ask her, because I've talked about it with her before I started writing this. So I feel like I've got to write this particular story. Like something saying, you have to write this. Then you can die, whatever, somebody crosses the double yellow line, whatever, you have a heart attack. But do this first. Yeah, one. But just one. Now, that doesn't mean that I sit down and say, what shall I write about today? I don't do that either. So ideas do come to me. They've all come to me.
Sure.
I haven't really manufactured ideas from my short stories or my novels. So they have come to me. But as far as kind of a muse that says, do this, you must do this, and here's how you must do this. And here's the inspiration for this. That one coming that much together has happened this one time.
Yeah.
And I'm getting ready to start that revision process and find out whether I like this draft as much as I think I'm going to like it. Because as I wrote it, I felt, oh, this is good, this is good, this is good. But that doesn't mean I'm right. I'll find out because you have to read your work honestly. And then after revisions, then it goes to beta readers and see what their reaction is. This one all the way through has felt like not like that a guiding hand, but and sort of an insistence from someone else that has happened.
Thanks everybody for checking out this clip of Writers Drinking Whiskey. If you'd like to catch the full episode, click the link up here, and please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and check out our members only section. Cheers.